So now for today's forum titled, Is There a New Jail in Our Future? Dr. Faith Morrison, co-president of the Copper Country chapter of the League of Women Voters, will be the presenter. Morrison, in collaboration with the Houghton County Planning Commission, has spearheaded a public education campaign to inform voters about the new jail proposal, which will be on the ballot in August, including tours of the existing jail. She is a professor emerita in the Department of Chemical Engineering at Michigan Tech. And we really appreciate you being here today, Faith. And I'll mention that there will be time for Q&A after the presentation.
Great. Well, thank you, Dave, and thank you to the fellowship for inviting me. I'm very happy to reach out to you and to share what I've learned about this jail problem and then answer any questions that I can. So I hope my screen is sharing. If I'm not, Dave will let me know. But I've entitled my presentation, Maintaining a Suitable and Sufficient Jail, and you'll see why in just a moment. This is a picture of our current jail here on the front. So this is my outline, and it's about a 30-minute talk. And I'll start with the basics because that's the way I like to think about things, like why are we even talking about these things and why is it a millage type of an arrangement. So I'll talk about that. And then I'll talk about the plan that the county commissioners have put forward and put onto the ballot on August 5th. So August 5th, there are 4 ballot questions on the ballot in Houghton County, and one of them is for the jail millage, which is 1.6 mils. So I'll also give the history of how this plan came to be, and then we'll take questions. So let's start with the basics. Why do we even need a jail? And in the Michigan common law, compiled law, which brings together all of the laws of Michigan in one place, every organized county, so every county is required to provide at its own expense a suitable courthouse and a suitable and sufficient jail. So that's my title. Why do we need what about maintaining a suitable and sufficient jail? And further in the Michigan compiled law is the requirement that any jail be proper, efficient, and humanely administered. So those are our requirements as a county. So these are not things that go to anybody else. We can't look to the state to solve this problem. We must maintain a suitable and sufficient jail. It's one of our fundamental roles. So we all know what a jail is for. It's to maintain law and order in the county. And different people end up in the jail. Those arrested because they're accused or believed to have committed a crime. Those who are awaiting a trial, those who are sentenced to a sentence of less than 1 year, and those who are beset by a mental health crisis. Maybe people aren't so aware of that, but if an individual presents themselves somewhere and makes some kind of trouble that it needs to be addressed, they will be arrested, even if they're having a mental health crisis. If they present at the hospital with an illness but become too much for the medical staff to safely address, they will call the sheriff, and the sheriff will come and they will end up in the jail. So what I want to point out here right at the beginning of the talk is that only one of these 4 categories of people is people who've actually been convicted of a crime. So a lot of the pushback that we get when we talk about the jail is, well, people have committed crimes and therefore they deserve what they get in a jail. But really, it's a minority of the people in the jail who've been convicted of any crime. And that's our judicial system. You're not a criminal until you've been convicted of a crime. Another question that I get about jails and how big they should be is related to, can't they go out on bail or have an ankle monitor or be released either through the drug court process or to a work camp or early release? And those are all options here in Houghton County, and they are used, but it's all up to the courts. So if the courts believe that an individual's sentence or arrest can be addressed by one of these features, that's up to the courts, and they do very properly use those. Nevertheless, we have a jail with a population that's too big for the size we have. So my second question is, who decides this? Who actually has to put the boots on the ground and say, this is the jail we're going to have? And fundamentally, it's the voters, because the voters of the county are the ones who elect the commissioners. And the commissioners, we have 5 commissioners in Houghton County elected in 5 districts, and they have the responsibility to deliberate, meet, and follow the laws of the state of Michigan and the United States of America. And so it's fundamentally the voters through their representatives, the commissioners. But this also, you notice, means that obviously we are subject in the county to the Constitution of the state of Michigan and to the United States Constitution. And if we in having our jail or not maintaining our jail are in violation of those laws, the state or the feds have the power to intervene. So although we have the obligation to run a suitable and sufficient jail, if we fail to do so, either as visualized by actions of a court or by a lawsuit, or by a failed inspection through the Michigan Bureau of Corrections, the state or the feds can intervene and say, we will take over your facility and do it our way. So what I'm talking about is a jail that has been found to be insufficient. I will show the report card in a moment. And if we continue to dare the state authorities and the federal authorities to make us do something about it, they will eventually meet that dare. So that's the most expensive way for people for whom the cost is the major driver. The most expensive way to deal with the condition of our jail is to let the feds take us over, and it'll cost 3 to 4 times as much to the county, and the county will still be the one paying. It will not be the feds or the state who pay. So in summary, the jail is our obligation. As a county, this is on our shoulders. We have representatives, and they have been working to address this problem really for decades, but the voters have been turning them down. There are, however, constitutional requirements that will eventually intervene. Okay, so there is a millage on the ballot. I'm calling it the Sharon Avenue Jail Plan. And let me show you first a little bit about our current jail so you can put it into context. So our current jail was built in 1963 after the voters 3 times turned down the opportunity to fix the jail in the 60s. And they built us this facility. This is the main floor. And I've circled in red the cells that are in our current jail. So we have beds for 28 inmates in these combination of 1-person, 2-person, and 6-person cells. And they are in this what's called a linear style, which is a very staff-intensive sorting out of a jail. You'll see in the more modern jails that they use a pod system that allows a fewer number of corrections officers to monitor the jail. So this is how much of the jail is dedicated to the living quarters of the inmates. There are no day rooms in the current jail, meaning everybody who's in the jail spends all their time in their cell, except when there's time to take them outside or good enough weather that they can use the outdoor recreational facilities, which I was told by the jail staff that it's very rarely that they can take people out for that little basketball court that's in the back. Circled here in green is the intake booking areas of the jail, which is very small. So in this space is where individuals who are being booked into the jail are brought in, and it's so tight. And we've been giving these jail tours for months now, and I invite anybody on the call, if you would like to tour the jail, I can arrange that for you. It's so tight that you can't really even imagine 2 corrections officers handling somebody who's not cooperating. So it's a very dicey arrangement and we believe very unsafe. So it's very compact. When we tour the jail, the tour, Travis DeSalier, who's the jail captain, often tells us if there's something going on down there, we have to wait that out because there's no room for us to be there if they're actually doing a booking. So in addition, these purple rooms are the sheriff's administrative offices. So that's where his staff are. There's a kitchen. All the residents of the jail must be fed, and a laundry, ditto to that. And then I also want to point out this garage here, which is called the Sally Port, which is wedged in between some cells and the laundry and the holding area. And so it's a fixed size, and it's currently too small for the patrol cars in the county to actually get into the garage. So they can get in, but they can't open the doors. Okay, so if they have a prisoner in the patrol vehicle, they have to park outside, open the doors, and then bring that individual in. If the individual is cooperating, so good for that. But if they're not cooperating, it's a very dangerous situation. There is also a set of stairs from the Sally Port into the jail. And there are other stairs beside that. It's a facility that's completely not compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. And so this staircase, in addition, is so narrow that, again, if somebody's not cooperating and you have 2 officers trying to move them, It's really a tribute to the current jail staff that they're able to manage in such a tight space. So when these are evaluated by the Michigan Department of Corrections, there are 14 areas where they assess the condition of our facilities, and we are non-compliant in 6 of them, and only marginally or minimally compliant in most of the rest. There's a single area, which is our detox holding cells, that are generally compliant with the regulations of the MDOC, and the rest are simply out of compliance. So this is in a nutshell, the problem. The jail is not suit to purpose. What's the plan? Well, the plan is to get all of those things compliant. So I'm going to talk about the plan itself, but this is how we define compliant. Compliant is that according to the Construction Handbook for Jails and Lockups, which you can download from the internet yourself if you're curious, we're trying to build the county is trying to propose a new facility that will get a completely green scorecard when compared to the DOC requirements. So this is a rendering. It's really just a rough rendering of what the plan is. And the plan is to build an entirely new facility on a plot of land on the south side of Sharon Avenue in Houghton, on the backside of a 6-acre lot, where the middle part of the lot is occupied by what is currently a church. The county bought this building in 2022 when it became available, and the plan is to put this facility, shown here again in a rough drawing, on that spot. This taller part of the facility, those are the 2 level jail cells there, and the rest is the sheriff's office and all those other operational rooms that you saw. So looking down, and notice that I've changed north to south. So now north is up. So the church church and parking currently is about 2/3 of the lot. And then there'll be a facility here on the south end of the lot with the proposed new jail and sheriff's office. The existing building, at the moment, there are no specific plans, but there are generally agreed plans that's where some of the other functions that the county have in the courthouse will go eventually, but they are not part of the millage funding, and there's nothing written down about what they plan. Other than this is the intention of the current commissioners, that what is built is not going to impact the buildings that are currently there. So this is a little zoomed in view so you can see what a modern jail looks like. And this central, this radially designed area over here, these are the cells. So I'm going to show you on the next slide what a modern jail cell looks like, but all of these trapezoidal regions here, these are day rooms. So the small rooms on the periphery are the cells where the inmates sleep. And then if everybody's behaving, if everybody's following the rules of the jail, they are allowed out during the day into day rooms. We do not have any day rooms whatsoever on our current jail. You saw it a slide or 2 ago. So going back to the old slide, you see these are all sleeping areas. The cells themselves are all sleeping, living areas. There is no separate place that they ever move out to in our current jail. In the new design, and this is a design that's across corrections across the country, there's what's called a day room where occupants of various cells can eat their meals at a table and have some social interactions, maintain their mental health. So that's the jail part. Over here also are the program areas in orange. So another thing missing from on that list of deficient areas is space to run programs. So there'll be a classroom. I believe this is the classroom over here. And then this is the recreation area and other rooms where there can be private meetings with lawyers, meeting with therapists or religious leaders, or have a program for those who are addicted or whatever. Mental health growth programs can all be taking place in the new jail. The sheriff's executive offices are here, the road patrol. These rooms were not showed in my other floor plan because they were in a level below, but those will be there. Investigations, this is again for the officers that investigate crimes. The public area, so the public will come in here and can get their fingerprint because they've got a job that requires a fingerprint or whatever else business they have with the sheriff's office. And The F is the corrections administration. So this is where the COs are. Intake and booking, much bigger, much safer amount of space here for intake and booking. And then I want to point out the Sally Port. So this is what a modern Sally Port is. Instead of having a garage that is fenced in by two sides by other purposes of the jail, you can drive a patrol vehicle in, you can shut the front and back so that the public is not exposed. You can open the doors of the patrol vehicle, and then you can take the person in custody directly to intake. So this misses one important piece, which is that there's going to be a small piece of the court, the district court in this building as well, because Judge Davatella said that being separate from the courtroom and the rest of the court staff is not his favorite thing, but it would be made completely workable if he would have a small court where he could do arraignments to provide to the inmates their constitutional right to be arraigned before a live judge. And that will be also built in the jail that's proposed. So again, there aren't engineering drawings. There are no fixed plans for the design because the county board is moving on deadlines to get this done as quickly as possible. But the consultants that they're using have provided these pictures and mock-ups of what a modern jail looks like. So up here on the upper left, a two-person cell is the space that they're confined to overnight. But then down here on the lower left are what those day rooms look like. So it's 2 levels of cells. So these individuals can all come out and socialize in this larger space here. And this here on the left, 2 levels of cells, and they could come down and socialize and eat their meals and spend their daytime in a much more humane. Remember, humane is a requirement of the Michigan compiled law, much more humane space. This is the control room. So going back to the previous slide here, the control room sits here so that it can monitor the occupants of all the cells. Now maybe you can see these day rooms. These are all the day rooms here, these trapezoidal pieces. And then the actual living quarters are in the back. And so in addition, so this control room allows for that monitoring without having the difficulties of the current floor plan. So, and then down here, it shows the typical indoor-outdoor recreation area. What they mean by an indoor-outdoor recreation area is that this is space for getting exercise for those inmates who qualify. And then they make it into an outdoor recreation area by having these very large garage door type openings up high where they can't be used to escape, but they can let in fresh air. So that's the classic design these days of an indoor-outdoor recreation area. All right, so how much will it cost? It's going to cost $32 million according to the consultants, and this is all without engineering plans. So it's an estimate, but it's an estimate from individuals, as I'll introduce them in a bit, who have quite a bit of expertise in this area. And so the county board proposes to borrow that money, to bond out their money with a 1.6 million bond, which for the median home in Houghton County would be $65 a year. So the median home taxable value is just over $40,000. So if your house is if your house is much higher than the median tax value, you'll have more. But if it's double that, it'll be $130 a year, and if it's triple that, it'll be $180 per year. So that's the cost of the 30-year bond. The plan is for 70 beds. So currently we have 28. The 28 beds is insufficient. And we do end up putting people out into the public that have not yet finished their sentences or that really should be at least serving out a short jail stay to make a point to them about what brought them to the jail in the first place. And that's a bit of a disadvantage because there is a purpose of changing the mind of an individual that holding them in a jail makes, and it's a very disadvantageous to send the message that if you do certain things, you won't go to jail because there's no space for you. So our current average daily population is sufficient. It's sufficiently high that we should really have at least 50 beds in our current jail with no considered increase in population. And the county board, with the sheriff's advice, has asked for 70 beds. 60 was the least that the consultants said should be built. And the sheriff asked for 70. It was only about 1.2 million more to put those extra 10 beds in. And it saves running out of space, having a problem anytime soon. So in summary, a modern jail is proposed that allows for increase in safe operation for the jail staff and also for the inmates, relieves that tightness that is really a severe problem. Our jail was built in 1963, which is 2 decades before the first personal computer. And so the whole issue of handling modern technology needs to be updated as well in our jail. And it does address the other choices I'll talk about in a minute that were further away from the courthouse than this one. It's pretty close to the courthouse, just up the hill, and it costs 1.6 mil for 30 years. So I cut to the chase and got you the plan so you'd have it in your mind. But why did we pick this plan? I mean, what other plans were considered, and did we really have to do it this way? That's the next part of my talk. Why this plan? Why not something else? And the first millage to replace the 1963 jail failed in 2000. So it's been 25 years that solutions to the issues in the jail have been attempted and failed. And when a millage fails, you learn a lot because the voters tell you by their voting what they think is a good solution and what they do not think is a good solution. So here are some of the things that the community has considered. One, lots of people off the top of their head think, why don't you just put another level on the current jail and solve the problem there? And you saw with the floor plans the problem with that. The Sally Port isn't addressed. The fact that various spaces are very small and it's hard to keep up with technology, none of that is addressed by staying in the current building. And it is really, really out of date. So that never went to the voting public, but that's the reasons why that one is not a particularly useful suggestion. It was suggested, and in 2011, we looked at building a new facility right next to the courthouse. The voters turned it down. They turned it down in large part because it was in the downtown area, and it was also a very large proposed system, larger even than the one that's being proposed now. So there was, as in all cases, there was a coalition of no votes in that case. And in the meantime, that option of building that close to the courthouse has completely disappeared because the county no longer owns property of sufficient size to build there. And they were also very concerned about building for future needs right there in downtown, being connected to, not stuck exactly, but being sort of having a lot of invested costs and it being in downtown. So in 2018, there was a choice to just put a new jail on the back of the current courthouse, which was also turned down. Okay, so in that case, the League of Women Voters, the group that I'm associated with, did surveys and a lot of discussion with the public why they turned that down, both before and after, actually, what their reactions were. And there was a very strong "we don't want it in Houghton" sentiment, and a lot of "we don't want it crammed onto the back of the courthouse." And it was very inexpensive compared to some other choices, but again, it was turned down by the public. And then I am going to address a very common suggestion, the Camp Kitwin suggestion, because it keeps coming up in public discussions. The Camp Kitwin suggestion, which refers to the camp that is in Painesdale, 8 miles from Houghton, and in 2011, certainly it was a plausible option for a new jail. It was seriously considered in 2011 and in 2018. And immediately after the failed 2018 millage, it was costed again by the experts at UP Engineer and Architects to see if it was really possible, because there were some skeptics on the board who thought maybe we hadn't taken this seriously enough. And it was deemed possible to upgrade it to be a jail. But the problem is, it was a very low security facility, had dorm style rooms, though construction materials were not sturdy enough to prevent the kind of escapes that we've just seen in Louisiana and other places. So that would have had to have been addressed. It's in that linear style. It's not the pod style that's easier to maintain. So it would have cost more in operating costs. It wasn't in the county seat, which is okay, but the sheriff's office must be in the county seat. So the sheriff's office would have been in Houghton and the jail would have been in Painesdale, and they would have been going back and forth unless we had gone through the paperwork to move the county seat to Painesdale, and then all of us would have been going to Painesdale for any business we had with the county. There's an access road that would have had to been maintained, etc. So in addition, the facility was closed in 2009. It wasn't secured or maintained by the state. It was full of mold in 2019 when it was last evaluated. And in any case, the property has been sold and somebody else owns it. So for all those reasons, both the old reasons and the new reasons, this is, although it was seriously considered several times, it is too many shortcomings, and it would never have saved the county money. And it was good stewardship of county money that kept Camp Kitwin from being the plan. So just to summarize, in 2000, the county board proposed a 34-bed jail with a 21-bed work camp for $3.3 million, and it failed by 3-1. In 2011, they looked at that across Dodge Street property for 5 times as much money, $15 million, and it also failed, 3-1, not 4-1, 3-1. And in 2018, they proposed the cheapest version they could, $11 million. It didn't address anything with the sheriff's office. It gave a 55-bed jail only, and it failed 51% to 41%. So the voters are telling us that some of these options are really not what they want. And so the current proposal, and it keeps getting expensive. It got 5 times as more expensive, and now it's 10 times more expensive than if we had solved it in 2000. And it's 3 times as expensive as if we had solved it in 2018, and twice as expensive if we had solved it in 2011. So if we don't solve it in 2024, we can think of $64 million as a low ball of the next time we try this. All right, so that's the vote. It's a 70-bed jail. So this is a jail that will address the needs of Houghton County, bring us up to Barton Bureau of Corrections standards, and we can afford it if we pass this millage. Now, another important question from my perspective is how was the public involved in developing this plan? Have they had a chance to weigh in? Or has this all just gone on behind closed doors with no input from the public? And so I want to talk about the process that was used to come up with the Sharon Avenue plan, which began in 2019. So the minute the 2018 millage failed, the county board took a breath and then was convinced by the League of Women Voters in part and other voices in the county that this is getting ridiculous. We have tried these various things. We need to find out what the public want and keep them involved. So the county board assembled the 2019 jail task force, and the League of Women Voters had people on that task force, as did the various constituencies in the county, and various people who popped their hand up and said, I want to give input in this case. The meetings of the jail task force were structured as meetings of the county board. So once you have more than 3 members of the county board together, you're having a county board meeting. So there are formal minutes from these meetings, and they are online at these URLs if you want to take a look at them. I have looked at them. They are very informative. There was wide participation. There were 4 meetings. They did things in between. They came up with 4 plans. They wanted to know more about the relative costs. They broke the members of the task force into 4 subcommittees. The subcommittees met outside of the task force. They worked it out, and they came back and they reported to the committee of a whole. And again, if you look at these task force minutes, you'll see how those conversations went. So at the end of the day, the things that rose to the top were that this issue of separating the sheriff's office and the jail should be addressed by putting the new jail in the city of Houghton. They didn't want to consider the Painesdale or even any other option in Portage Township or outside of the city. They didn't want to go anywhere near that level of separation. Second, they wanted to make sure that nobody forgot that there are problems in the courthouse for all the residents that are not moving to a new jail and sheriff's office. And so they said, if we're going to keep it in Houghton, we need a site. So the first step of the most of significantly moving toward what the people need for their new jail is to find a new site. So that's what happened. So the county board agreed, and they said, let's start looking for a site. And people jump right to the Sharon Avenue site, and here's the site they found, but they actually looked at other sites. So again, if you read the task force minutes, you will see some Portage Street property they looked at. They looked at a parcel behind where the jail is now going to be on Evergreen, and they looked all over. And I'm inviting you to think about the city of Houghton yourself. Okay, for a building of the size of a new jail to be in the city of Houghton, find me a place. All right, so Michigan Tech takes up a huge amount of the city of Houghton. The fact that it's right on the water constrains. There are very nice houses over there at the developments on the west side of Houghton. That's not where anybody wants us to build a jail. Downtown has been ruled out by the failed millages. Where to have this jail? And so what the realtors that are on the board and others who have experience noticed was that although they couldn't find a site of sufficient size, there was a site in Portage Township that was on the border of Houghton City that perhaps could suit as a new jail. And they looked at the church property that is the one they bought in 2022. And at the time, we're getting a ballpark price of $1 million. Then, of course, there were lots of delays still because of the residual COVID issues, but they finalized purchasing that property for $1.2 million using ARPA money, American Rescue Plan funds, for $1.3 million of ARPA funds. So they didn't use county money other than these ARPA funds that were designated for the county. And then another thing we hear about people worried about the property of the church being purchased is who's been paying all this time? Has the church been getting free rent? And the church has not been paying rent, but they negotiated at the time of the sale that they would like to stay in the building until August of 2026. They paid all their own utilities and they kept the building up. They shoveled the roof. Okay. The only other thing, again, in these negotiations was that the county would put the building under its insurance plan, and that's the status. That's exactly the plan. And as you know, from perhaps most of you have purchased real estate before, it's always a negotiation. So they purchased the property for a little bit less than the assessed value under these terms, and they weren't ready to build the jail at the time. And so they really didn't need the facility to just sit there and degrade in Copper Country winters. And so it actually saved the county the cost of maintaining that building all this time, cutting the grass, shoveling the roof, because the church stayed there. And then what's the next step once you've got a site? Oh, I also want to point out that Marquette County has also outgrown their jail. Their jail is in urgent need of replacement. And right now they're on a complete stall because Marquette County cannot find a site for their new jail. As you know, over COVID and beyond, property values have hit the roof. And to buy such a large piece of property is a very difficult proposition, especially when you can't choose to just give up on putting it in the county seat. And so Marquette County does not, to my knowledge, have a solution to their problem. And so the county board, having acted before the properties were no longer available, has actually made solving this jail problem possible. All right, so you've got the site. Now what to build? I was at a county board meeting where they turned to the sheriff and said, Sheriff, tell us, get some people together, go over and talk to the other people in the courthouse and decide how you want to go forward with this. Well, it didn't take the sheriff too much longer to realize that he's not a jail builder. He doesn't have the time to become an expert on the Michigan Department of Corrections requirements and building codes, et cetera, for jails. And so he asked his colleagues in the Sheriff's Association, how does this get done? And they recommended the consultants that the county hired. So the consultant hired a Bon Marsh Bice and Securitecture, which is a team in Lower Michigan, have completed 20 projects, UP corrections projects in the UP. They did the Delta County 2018 jail. And so they actually do know how to do these trade-offs. And that's who they hired. They brought it to the county. And on this is clearly not right. I think it was October 15th, 2024. They were engaged by the county for $47,000. And that's not too bad for a typical consulting fee. And they put us through their process. So what's the process? A Bon Marche Bison Secure Sector came up here and looked the project over, and then had some public meetings to get input from the public. So this is the county steering committee that was consulted. And remember, I'm making the case that the public had considerable input into this Sharon Avenue plan. So here are the names of the people who showed up for the meetings between the consultants and various stakeholders. Notice Judge Davatella is there, the circuit court's judge is there, county commissioners are there, 2, not any more than 2, because otherwise it would be a meeting. The League of Women Voters is there. Kevin Storr from Copper Shores is there, prosecuting attorney at the time. So this is how this process went. There were 4 meetings, and they educated us on what the questions were. They got our input, and they finally, the last meeting was this very large charrette meeting, which is an intense planning meeting in which they had come back to us with some roughed out plans and roughed out prices so that we could give them trade-off information about if we did this and didn't do that, how much would it cost? And then there was a huge public meeting with in the courtroom, in the courthouse on April 15th of this year. So the master plan came out from the consultants after the charrette. It was placed on the website of the county board, where it is there today for your reading pleasure. And then it was presented. I did 3 presentations this spring around the county, one in Calumet, one in Hancock, and one in Alson in Laird Township, to present it to the public, and said, please come to the big board meeting. We had a very big board meeting. It was very well attended with a Zoom slash Microsoft Teams option for attending remotely as we are meeting. And that meeting was consisted entirely of members of the public commenting on the plan, and they commented. And the comments are written down, and those are in the meeting minutes for the county board, because that was a county board meeting. So if you want to read what the public had to say on April 15th, go to houghtoncounty.net and scroll to the administration and find the county board and look up the minutes. It's there. After that meeting, the board met and decided on the ballot question, which is also on the county's website, and it's what you will vote on August 5th, or have voted on if you've already voted. And I am giving the League of Women Voters are giving 3 more public meetings for the public to hear about the millage, the details. You're listening to that presentation, so you're also attending that meeting. I've also got a YouTube recording of myself giving this with Vicki Bergvall's help, and that's already up on YouTube with the link on the League of Women Voters of the Copper Country website if you would like to see this whole thing again. And I know that this is being recorded and will be posted on the UU's website, so plenty of opportunities there. So how was it developed? I hope I've convinced you that it was developed with considerable input from the public. And at each step, the public had the opportunity to talk to their representatives and say how they were feeling about what they were seeing. And they still have that opportunity to do that, because at the 3 public meetings that I'm giving this month, you can still give, because as you can see, the plans are not completely written down. If you want to make a case that you wish more information about those programs, or you want to know more about some of the spaces or what's being going on, you can come to the meetings and talk to a commissioner. And of course, you can always just contact your commissioners directly. So I'm almost done, but I want to also tell you a little bit more about what can happen if we kick the can down the road one more time, because it's already happened in Houghton County. So in July 1960, the circuit court ordered our jail closed because we had failed to pass millage to upgrade the jail. And so our jail was closed. All our prisoners were sent to Marquette and Berga, which will not happen this time, because if they close our jail this time, they will not go to Marquette or Berga. They will go very far away. And we will pay every bit of their housing and transportation costs without any chance to turn down that invitation. So it's happened before. And then we also have the experience of Sheriff Bob Perriam, who's a Hancock native. And he retired as sheriff of Monroe County in Florida, which is in the Florida Keys. And he worked in that county sheriff's office during a time when they had lost a class action lawsuit. Their jail did not get shut down, but what they got was taken over by a federal court. They had to report twice a day what they had done that day. It had to be approved by the federal court every single day of decades of time that they were under federal court authority. So we don't want this. If you'd like to see Sheriff Perriam talking to me about those, the QR code that's right there on the bottom of the screen, the link that's above it, has that interview. It's on the same webpage that the league's videos go to, the YouTube page. So here's the real end of my talk. In summary, we are obligated as a county to have a suitable and sufficient jail. The public is driving the process for now. If we kick the can too far down the road, we may lose our agency in that regard. The process for developing the Sharon Avenue plan that's on the millage has been very open. That doesn't mean everybody knows about it or has heard about it, because not everybody comes to county board meetings or comes to public meetings, but we are reaching out. The League of Women Voters is trying to make sure everybody hears about it and gets their questions answered. County board, 2 members of the county board were on Copper Country today, this morning. So on July 13th, 2025, if you look for the Copper Country Today recording, which will be up on the WOLV and others' websites, you can listen to those 2 county commissioners had to say about the project, trying to be as open as possible. Lessons were learned from past attempts to address the jail. Expert advice, people who've done this before, was consulted, and thankfully a parcel was purchased so that we have a place to build a new jail. The millage goes before the public on August 5th. If you're not going to be here, you can get your absentee ballot from your county or township clerk. But remember that if you're mailing it in, if you're mailing it from abroad, you may be close to the window for that closing. If you're mailing it from some other state, again, you have to keep in track of how long it'll take to get here. So here's my slide about the 3 public meetings. They're at Portage District Library, Calumet Township Hall, and Laird Township Hall, and on YouTube. I've asked the county, I haven't checked if it's up yet, but it will be on houghtoncounty.net. This information is already up on the League's website, which is LWVCCMI, League of Women Voters, Copper Country, Michigan, .com. I'm like blanking for a second there. So the LWVCCMI.org, I think, website is the right one. And then here are all the people who helped to develop the materials that I used for this report. And I think my next slide just says thank you. So I can leave this up for a minute if anybody wants to read the thank yous. But thank you again to the Q&A Unitarian Universalist Fellowship for inviting me here, and I'd be happy to answer questions that you may have.